I used to be a marketer in cybersecurity, and I was like, what I wouldn't have given to have this back then, because I was selling intelligence grade VPNs to the Missile Defense Agency. And if you're in a conversation with a prospect and they ask a really technical question, you cannot just like make these answers up.
Okay, that was so good.
The whole series is about exploring how people's buying decision takes place from like the moment something becomes necessary to a final decision.
Especially if you're like, well, we can do that too. It's like, why didn't we know that before? That would be helpful. That's exactly the type of stuff I was hoping to hear out of these interviews. So cool.
This is Buyer Truths, a research project about how tech buyers make decisions and what it means for how you sell.
My name is Jen Allen Knuth from Demand Gen with a J, and I'm here with my partner, Drew Giovanelli from Buried Winds.
All right, we're live.
So do you recall when you first heard about OneMind and where that was?
Yes, I actually was introduced to the CEO, Amanda Kalo, by Cassie Young, who is a partner at Primary Venture Partners, a VC firm, and she had just invested in OneMind. And Cassie has always been a friend of Pavilion. She's like an incredible role model, by the way, just for anyone, but certainly as a woman in tech, she's one of those people that I'm like constantly in awe of. And so Cassie had written and said, I think you should meet Amanda. She's just taken this CEO role at this really interesting company that we invested in, and maybe there's some opportunity. And she wasn't even saying an opportunity for them to sell to Pavilion. It was more like they're selling to the people who belong to Pavilion, so you guys should talk. And so we did. I met Amanda, and she just was like full of enthusiasm for this product. And this was pretty early. So I first spoke to Amanda, it was probably 2 years ago at this time, which is really before these AI human avatars were out on the market. And I'll never forget at the time, the first thing she showed me was the predecessor to OneMind was this other organization that had the tech, and they had made a digital Deepak Chopra, and it was lifelike. And you could talk with digital Deepak. And they had also made a digital Barack Obama. And so she was showing me these things, and I'm like, this is crazy. It seemed very like science fiction-y at the time, and I hadn't seen any other companies doing it. And, in the beginning, I was like, oh, it's novel, it's interesting, it's fun. It kind of feels like the kind of thing that you'd need to be a huge company to do. And so in the beginning, I wasn't really thinking of it for us at all. But the tech evolved, and I'm happy to get into like how we started talking about it for Pavilion. But in the beginning, yeah, it was like this novelty factor. And so we actually had her come and speak at some of our conferences to talk about the tech and how it could be used in go-to-market to expose our audience to like what we saw as a new innovation.
How did you get from this? How did you get from this intro where this mentor and they got this unique product to I'm evaluating for Pavilion, and in that process, did you add other vendors to the mix, or was that kind of relationship based and it solved the problem and you got there? Help me bridge the gap.
Yeah. So I think the first, like when it first started to hit me that it might be something we could consider for ourselves was when Amanda, and she invested a lot of time in this relationship as the CEO. They were really early stage, so it was founder-led sales. She started like sharing some different use cases with me, and I'll never forget like the real aha moment that I had wasn't seeing digital Deepak or like the sizzle of the tech. It was cool, and I was like, this is entertaining, and I could see lots of ways to use it. But at the end of the day, if it's just like a digital superhuman that talks to you on the site, you can get the same information through a pure chat interface, probably, with existing products. And so I was like, I needed to understand what's so different about this that like is truly a game changer. And when she started showing me a few key things, which I'll list out, then it hit me. One was like really honestly, the voice interface itself to me was a bit of an unlock, because I am, and anybody who's ever worked for me or with me knows this, like maybe it's just because I'm like a Gen Xer, but I really like to talk to my phone. I don't like to type. I'm not a fast typer. I don't know if it's fat fingers, but I dictate everything, and people laugh at me because of it. They're like, oh, she's talking to her phone again. And so I just personally really like a voice interface. I can speak as quickly as I'm thinking. It just feels efficient. So that was like, got me interested, but it wasn't enough. What really was the unlock was when she demoed it for me and explained it's not just a digital human talking to you. What I would equate it to is more like a sales engineer, because the product they built, when she showed it to me, it could pull up slides, it could pull up videos, and all of a sudden I was like, wait, it can pull in visual aids on the fly. Like that all of a sudden is a game changer, because again, I wasn't even immediately thinking about it for Pavilion because I didn't think we were big enough in the beginning. But I started thinking through, I used to be a marketer in cybersecurity, and I was like, what I wouldn't have given to have this back then, because I was selling intelligence grade VPNs to the Missile Defense Agency. And if you're in a conversation with a prospect and they ask a really technical question, you cannot just like make these answers up. You really need a sales engineer with deep, deep technical experience. And I immediately saw, I was like, if we had this kind of a thing, because by the way, it also could join Zoom calls. I was like, if I could have this on Zoom with me and somebody asked, like, I need to see the schematics of how the VPN works so that you can port in through a hostile country, which are like questions we would get. And if it could just be like, let me pull up the schematics. Let me show you a video. Let me answer that question. Knowing that with AI, with this type of AI, not like ChatGPT, you can actually have 100% accuracy. Whereas with humans, it's very hard for them to retain that amount of knowledge, particularly when it's highly technical. It's really hard to find one person who can answer all those questions. Like that to me was the thing where I was like, oh, wow, this is a big deal in especially technical sales. But it's true for any kind of a sale. Like at Pavilion, we had so many different use cases depending upon the persona, their geographic location, their level of seniority. And I was like, having a feature on the site where you could just be anywhere in the world at any hour of the day or night, come and talk to a digital superhuman and have them pull up a map of where every Pavilion chapter is, have them show you the curriculum of the CMO school, have them show you the page on the site with the photos of the chapter heads in your city. Like that is so compelling. And they don't have to wait 24 hours until someone wakes up, across the world for them to then schedule a meeting for 3 days later to get the answer. Like that just felt like such a better experience.
So you talked about like 2 years prior, you were looking at Obama and it was like, oh, there's a sexy factor. This is cool. Then you talk about getting much closer to your use case. Can you tell us how that second conversation you just talked about came about? Was this like Amanda reached out to re-engage you? You reached out to her? Like, how did that come about to get closer into evaluating?
Yeah, I mean, to her credit, she's a great founder seller. She was pretty persistent, and she just held this belief that it would be great for Pavilion. And I was the first person on the team, I think, who was like, yep, I see it, because I had spent some time with her. And I think in the early days, the tech needed to grow, right? Like there was a few times it got demoed and it froze, and it was like anything early stage, it's the technology adoption curve. I think I was probably the one who was like the equivalent of waiting in line at the Apple store for when the new iPhone comes out versus a few other people on the team who were like, I'll wait for my friends to test that iPhone. And so we needed to get over that technical hump. They needed to get the product into a place where some of the glitchiness and the lagginess was gone. And they did that. And then they brought on a guy named Ben Samuels, who had been the chief revenue officer at WeWork, as a interim advisor, like a CRO. And I remember he spent some time with our team, and he actually worked with us and took our data on how many website visitors we had, how many of those would take a meeting with an SDR, how many would wind up joining. And he did this math where it was like, if we can move your conversion rates even by this tiny fraction of a percent, based on your ACV, this is what it would mean for you. And it was just so compelling, the ROI case. And they built a whole spreadsheet with the ROI justification and the business case. And it seemed really obvious to me. But, anytime you're purchasing a product that's really early stage, where there aren't a lot of reference logos, that's a hard conversation. And so I think some of what slowed us down was that it was like our buying committee internally needing to believe that this was a real thing. But yeah, Amanda's persistence. I mean, she just kept on me, and she was like, here are the use cases. let us build an ROI calculator for you and show you exactly the math behind how this is going to make sense. She just did a great job shepherding us through that process.
Pardon the interruption, but if you're enjoying this podcast, I think you're going to love the full research report where we surveyed 172 buyers to understand how software is evaluated and what it means for how you sell. These are all people who have formally evaluated at least one new vendor in the past year, made a purchase, and majority of them over $50K. Now, these people are half enterprise buyers, half mid-market buyers, also half technical and half business roles. We go into topics like what happens when there's an AI mandate to drive the deal, why do people stay with vendors that they know are worse than their existing solution, and what breaks a tie when there are two finalists neck and neck. I'd love for you to check it out. You can visit buyertruths.com. Now back to the pod.
Can I ask you about so you're excited, Amanda's excited, you're like what we would call a champion, right? Now you're on board and you talked about it, but it can't be just a you decision. It has to be a group decision. This is something I think a lot of sellers don't get to see. What happened when you hang up that call with Amanda? Like, what do you do next to champion that? And what are the, maybe even some of the friction points you hit internally as you're trying to get others as excited as you are?
And yeah, and I wouldn't even credit me ultimately with selling it internally. Because I think the whole team knew that I was a fan from very early on. And in some respects, I needed to step back and let other people come to their own conclusions and sell it. And so I will credit the OneMind team with doing a really great job with multi-threading. So they had folks like Ben building relationships with other people on our team. I also had our head of ops and our head of customer success join some calls with the OneMind team. And the team was not sold immediately. Again, it's just different personality profiles, different willingness to embrace early stage tech. But I think finally what led to it was the multi-threading on the part of the OneMind team, and they built relationships with enough different people internally within our team where they were able to talk them through how it would work. I think having somebody like a Ben work with them early on lent a lot of credibility because he came from a huge logo, highly respected, that conveyed trust. And I just think it was the cumulative sum of having me as an early champion, really enthusiastic about bringing the product in and also kind of putting my own personal reputation behind it and saying I know this is a risk. I believe in it. I'm willing to take the risk. And I think we're going to see ROI and my team will implement it because it's not a simple, let's just turn it on. You have to train the model and do all the work. And then coupling that with the trust building that they did around me as a champion, it was really powerful.
Can you give us an idea of the range of investment to buy something
Oh
like that?
gosh. Honestly, I don't know that I'd be able to be accurate, but let's say that it's tens of thousands of dollars.
Yeah, perfect.
Yeah, because I think I don't remember exactly how much we paid, and I know that the pricing has evolved, and so I think it depends on the use cases. And what's cool is even since I bought it now, I believe if I'm not mistaken, it has all kinds of multilingual capabilities, which make it even cooler. I knew that was a possibility that it was coming, and I was like, this is awesome. If we have a chapter in Paris, they could talk to it in French. How cool is that?
Yeah. And so did you consider any other vendors in the process?
So when we first started looking at it, there really weren't others 2 years ago. Now, a couple of them came on the scene. For example, Qualified, I know, was one that wound up coming out with a product. And I didn't really seriously look at the other ones, partially because, in the case of Qualified, if we were going to buy it, it meant investing in a much broader platform. And we weren't ready for that, honestly. Our team was smallish. We had limited bandwidth. I had a very particular use case I was trying to solve for. And in fact, when we finally did buy it, we signed the agreement with the explicit understanding that we weren't going to kick off for 5 months after the agreement signed, because we knew we had certain internal priorities that we had to get through first, and we couldn't distract the team. And so I was really worried that a bigger platform like a Qualified, we wouldn't see the ROI because we'd buy this big thing and we'd be using this tiny slice of it. And I wanted to really treat it as a proof of concept and show that having this digital superhuman on the site was the thing in and of itself that would be an unlock. And if it did, then that could open the door to other things. But I didn't want to bite off more than I could chew.
You said something, and it's probably a question for Jen, actually, maybe both of you. Oftentimes when we're trying to sell a product, we may get the, oh, this is compelling, this is interesting, but not now. We've got other priorities, this is interesting, but not now. You agreed to sign a contract 5 months before you're ready to start. Jen, how often are you facing that? Like, sellers must face that all the time. I'm curious
all the time.
Yeah.
Some of it's
So,
truthful. Some of it's like, just get out of here. I don't want to tell you no, so I don't have to be objection handled. But in your case, it was sincere, right? There was a rationale behind it, which was we've got other priorities that have to come first. But that's uncommon. I don't hear a lot of organizations getting customers to sign now with a later date. So what gave you the confidence to do that?
Yeah.
Like,
I think that part of the reason was they had invested a lot in building the relationship. And it wasn't just like a sales relationship. They were active in the community. They came to all of our events. We got to know the team. We knew their investors. They kept us up to date on the other logos they were signing. And I had gone to, for example, Winning by Design did a conference last winter, I think it was, where they showcased HubSpot and HubSpot's use case of OneMind and the ROI that it drove. And so what had happened was in the time that had elapsed since we first started talking, there was so much more customer proof that built trust. And that, coupled with the relationship that they had built with us as a team, I think convinced us that it was worth making that commitment. And I know for them, they were just motivated to lock in their relationship. And the only reason we delayed it was because of team bandwidth. We just really were trying to prioritize not overloading our team. And I'm glad we did, because when we finally got around to implementing it, it was like a couple month training process, but handled really well. We did it over the summer when we otherwise wouldn't be so busy. And it was great because then we were ready to kick it off by the fall. And we felt confident in it when we finally did that.
what I guess I should ask, were there points of friction internally that at any point made you think like, I don't know if we're going to be able to pull this through?
Oh, 100%. We were going to buy it much earlier, which would have been like a year and a half ago. We were at our annual conference and we were ready to kind of sign on the dotted line. And the OneMind team did a live demo at the conference, and the internet connection from to the stage was not great, and it glitched. And there were certain members of our internal team who were like, nope, we got to wait. It's not ready. And so that delayed it by a good 4 or 5 months. And it was just bad luck. I felt so bad for them.
I know. It's like your heart breaks.
That could have been any of us, right?
We only have a few minutes, but I do want to ask about kind of you and your new role, because I do think it's interesting. You've got this whole tech stack. When you get into a new role as marketing leader, is everything on the chopping block, or are you going through in a different way? How are you evaluating what software to keep, and how are the relationships with maybe the account directors affecting that?
Yeah. So as part of my 30, 60, 90 that I gave the CEO before I was even hired, I had do a tech stack audit as one of the things. But I always have believed when you come in that you need to tread very lightly when it comes to things like this. It's just like in marketing, they always say, don't redo the website in your first 6 months. Don't rebrand. I think it's always important to listen first and spend a little. It's like when you move into a new house, you want to kind of live in it for a while to make sure you really get how everything works. Or as I say to my husband, when we first bought our house, you have to go a full year before you make big landscaping changes, because you don't know what plants are going to pop out of the ground, right? So I kind of took the same approach with the tech stack audit. What I am prioritizing here is, number one is interoperability, just because of what tools like Clay and all these AI agents have unlocked. I want to make sure everything can talk to everything else. And so that's one of the things I looked at first, was how can I get the data from here to here so that we can orchestrate off of it? And I did make a few decisions based on interoperability failures, I would say. Then second of all was like, what functionality do we need? And so we have HubSpot for our marketing automation and CRM. And I had a meeting with our HubSpot rep to talk through, like, let's talk about what plan we're on. What is our pricing? What would upgrading unlock for us? What would the pricing look like? And I made it really clear to him, like, we're not making any decisions right now, but I'm just trying to understand what the options are, because I joined in like budgeting season for the next year. So I had to quickly vet a lot of tech to understand what might we invest in, even if we weren't planning to do it right away. Like, I needed the roadmap for the whole year. And so it was a lot of like looking at the current plans we're on, knowing how that limited us, putting together the strategy for this year, understanding what I needed from a tech standpoint to give me from, I'm not saying this well, what capabilities I needed to be able to do the things I was committing to do and what they would cost. So we haven't made any huge changes at all yet. And it's, like I said, it's been about 3 months, but we'll probably introduce some new things in the next month or two.
Do you
I'm
have a
gonna
few
squeeze a
minutes to go past, or
Oh,
are
okay, go
we?
ahead.
I just want.
I do have a 2 p.m.
Okay.
I
Okay.
can probably go for like 1 more minute or 2 more minutes.
I was going to ask. I think Jen would love to know, which is, has any inbound sales email or call broken through to you, and it's gotten you to take a call in your first 30, 60, 90?
So funny enough, it wasn't somebody who inbounded me. It was somebody who inbounded someone else. You might have seen it on LinkedIn, but there is a guy who owns a video production studio, I think out of India maybe, and he made this video for Pete Caputa about how he would change his
Yes.
podcast strategy. And he broke it all down into this analysis. And I was like, this is freaking amazing. I DM'd him on LinkedIn. He didn't even approach me. I approached him and I was like, I saw what you did. It was so good. We're thinking of a YouTube strategy. What is your pricing? And like, I went after him because of it. And I sent it to my BDR and I was like, if you want to see what next level looks like, this is the guy. So hats off to him. He was unbelievable.
Oh, I'm so glad you asked that question, Drew. What a cool story, Kathleen. That's awesome.
Thank you
Yeah.
for joining us, Kathleen. We'll follow up with clips and the full report when we get there.
Pardon the interruption, but if there's one cause I love even more than helping sellers win, it's helping rescue dogs like Chungus find a home. Many Paws Global Rescue is located in Palatine, Illinois, and takes in rescue dogs of all shapes, even as thick as this, and sizes. If you're looking for a new pup to sit under your desk and help you win deals, visit manypawsglobalrescue.org.